Hey everybody, it's the dude here to bring you another video. 2 episodes in and we have already seen a ton of death, but The Walking Dead never stops. How many more of our characters are going to get their ticket punched before the end of the season? Well, let's get started. Here are my Walking Dead Season 7 death predictions. I'll start off with a good one. Simon, Negan's right-hand man. Let me just say that I love Steve Ogg. He played a character named Trevor in Grand Theft Auto 5, and they did this thing where they digitally scanned his face, so he is in the game, and you get to play as him, and he's crazy. And it's amazing to see him in The Walking Dead, one of my favorite all-time shows. It's breaking my mind. But, however much I love him, his death is coming. Negan took away all 3 of Rick's right-hand men. Simon's gotta die just amazingly, like being blown up and Negan standing right by him and has to pick little pieces of Simon off of his face. He's not a character in the comics, so it's kind of all fun and games with him. Maybe Simon could be killed by Dwight. Huh? It's clear that Negan dotes on Simon, and compared to how he treats him, he treats Dwight like shit. He mocks him, and he's obviously punished him in some way. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that Dwight hates Simon too. I mean, he kisses the boss man's ass, and Dwight, I'm sure, doesn't really like Negan. That would be a pretty interesting dynamic, and even more so if Dwight actually ended up betraying Negan and killing Simon. Either way, I think Simon's days are numbered. Alright, now for the next one, and I'm going to go out on a pretty huge limb and say that none, not a one, of the surviving characters from the lineup are going to die this season. The 2 major character deaths we just got bought all those characters at least another season. The stories that each and every one of them can tell alive are stronger than the stories they could tell with their death. But in addition, I think that the majority of the characters who weren't in the lineup are much more killable. Let's use our handy-dandy fantasy dinner sequence to see who our options are. Alright, at this end you got Rick and Michonne. They won't die. Repeat with me. They won't die. Then you got Gabriel, who I assume is holding Judith. He's really redeemed himself in the eyes of the audience and in the eyes of Rick this past season. He could die saving the baby, or he could live forever and speak over every funeral to the end of time. Carol is probably the least killable person who wasn't in the lineup. She is one of the surviving Atlanta 4, one of the original members of the cast. After losing Glenn, I think that in itself has bought her maybe till the end of the show. On top of that, she's starting this whole new journey, which I'll get to in my episode 2 review coming later in the week. And if she didn't die at the end of last season when she wanted to, she'll probably never die. Alright, anybody who's worried for Daryl's life really shouldn't be. He won't die. He might be in for a world of hurt, but I wonder if Negan might want to turn Daryl to his side, make him one of the saviors. Now, whether or not Daryl turns is another story, but I really don't think Negan would ever want to kill him. 1, he likes him and he belongs to him now. And 2, he understands the guilt he feels. And that's useful to Negan. Daryl's death isn't useful to Negan. Okay, I say Carl and Enid are safe. The reason I say Enid is because Enid has to be there for Maggie. Having just lost Glenn, Maggie cannot lose Enid too. Tara. Now, Tara is an interesting story. Quickly, let's notice that Heath is not in Rick's future fantasy. I mean, Spencer's in Rick's fantasy, and if Spencer's there and Heath's not, well, it looks like Heath's gonna die. Now, I'm pretty sure that the actor playing Heath is starring in the 24 reboot on Fox, so it looks like he's a goner for good, and that's a shame. I really like Heath. In the comics, Heath forms a relationship with Denise, whereas in the show, Denise formed a relationship with Tara. And much later, there's a fantastic scene where Heath is injured, and Denise, being the only doctor, and his girlfriend, gets bit. So she, instead of cutting her arm off, saves Heath's life, and dies. It's an amazing out for Denise, and I was really disappointed when she got the arrow through the eye last season. We all love the Denise actor, but she took Abraham's spot, so that's why I kind of assumed that Abraham would get more than 2 episodes. But, never mind that. so I wonder what two people are going to get that story. Who is in a couple, one who has any amount of medical experience, could sacrifice themselves to save the other? The only people with medical experience I know are Dr. Carson at the Hilltop, but I suppose it doesn't have to be something like that. Right now it's a little unsure, but as soon as they start to introduce some characters that I think could fill those positions, I'll let you know. So back to Tara. Tara probably won't die right away. I assume Heath is going to die in the episode that they have alone together. So Tara will live at least long enough to find out that Denise has been killed. Now, what she does with that information is kind of up in the air. She is not a character from the comics. So how will she take this information? I don't really know. Is she going to try to quickly enact her revenge? That could possibly lead to her death. Or not. Tara is a great character, and probably the best thing to ever come out of a Governor episode. So, I don't know. Like I said before, Rosita, Eugene, Aaron, Maggie, and Sasha are all safe. In my opinion, their stories are just beginning. Alright, Spencer. Spencer is so dead. He's probably gonna say something stupid to Rosita about Abe. She'll dump his ass, and then he'll become even more of a bitch. Spencer is probably my least favorite character, and least favorite actor. He had that one scene where he stole some stuff from the supply room, got drunk, and yelled at Deanna how all of this was falling apart and all of it was her fault. Pretty easy to play drunk and angry, and I don't even think he did it very well, so I've always been of the opinion that he's one of the worst actors on the show, and I would be happy to see him go in some kind of satisfying way. And last at dinner is Morgan. Now in the comics, Morgan gets killed like Deanna does. He gets bit and they leave him in the house when they go into the herd of zombies. So his future is really up in the air. Morgan was in episode 1 with his son. He'd gone crazy by the time we see him in season 3. And then at the end of season 5, he was brought back into the show at a time where Rick was struggling with his brutality and his humanity. And just when Rick was at his worst, they rewrite and reintroduce a classic character as basically anti-Rick, someone who doesn't kill. He builds a prison cell similar to the cell he was transformed in by Eastman. He wants Rick to see it his way. He wants him to change. He says it himself that he built the cell just so next time we have some options. But still, Rick is sitting on his knees just like, I'm gonna kill you. And even though Rick has been broken by Negan, won't he eventually recover? And when and if he does, won't he still be struggling on whether or not he should kill Negan? Over the years, Rick has been constantly struggling with different issues about his own humanity. And each time, his mind is made up by the death of a major character. In season 2, when Rick is debating whether or not to kill the kid in the barn, Dale is the strongest advocate for not killing the kid. When Dale dies, Rick finally decides that we won't kill the kid. In season 3, Rick is all against the governor. Andrea wants to bring the Woodbury people and the prison people together, and at the end of the season, when she dies, that's what Rick does. He invites all the surviving Woodbury people to live at the prison. At the beginning of season 4, Rick is struggling with the idea that maybe you can't come back from the things you do. That's why he sends Carol away, because she did such a terrible thing, and he's struggling with the own terrible things he's done. He takes this to Herschel, and Herschel tells him that no, you can come back. And then at the mid-season finale, when the governor is at the front porch with Herschel and Michonne, Rick invites his people in, says, we can do this together. You can come back from the things you've done. And in his last moment, Herschel is proud of Rick for changing, right before the governor says, liar, and cuts Herschel's head off. In season 5, Rick has experienced the Marauders and the Terminus people, and has stopped trusting everyone. He won't even trust Gabriel. He's pushing everyone away. But then, Beth dies, and he immediately trusts Noah, and takes it upon himself to take him home, which leads them to Alexandria. Even though Eugene's cure was bogus, they still make their way to Washington because of Noah, because of Beth's death. In season 6, Rick is struggling to find value in the life of people who are less experienced than him. But then Deanna and Rick's replacement family dies, Carl gets shot, and the whole community comes together and gains the experience that Rick values. He learns to value the less experienced life so much that he helps the Hilltop out and rescues their people. My point is that this season begins with Rick saying, I'm gonna kill you. And then they give us a Morgan episode. For Rick to make a change, for him to grow. If history means anything, Morgan's death, and possibly some very affecting last words, could push Rick in a totally different direction. One that doesn't end in total war and destruction. And this could also make for a stellar season finale death. Alright everybody, that's the Morgan theory. Check out my in-depth weekly Walking Dead reviews. Please be sure to like, hit that subscribe button, follow me on Twitter, and watch it again. This has been The Dude. See ya.